Thank you, Caroline. So let's get started with learning about how we can change perception. I really like what Mayor Mason said about how perception can change the world. And it's not always what you do or what you are, it's how other people perceive who you are and what you do. And we're going to talk about what changes perception, and hopefully you'll learn a lot and have some tangible nuggets to take back with you and implement yourself in your own life, and at least test our theory, if nothing else. Right now I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Alicia Bridgewater, and ask our panel to please take a seat, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate that. So why don't I go ahead and get started as everyone is getting seated. As we've talked about, tonight is about enhancing perception to gain recognition, and we've all had that great, warm, and fuzzy feeling when we're getting the recognition for a job well done. You know, when you've put out 150% on a project or a launch or, you know, a product that's coming to fruition. It's amazing when you get that feeling. But when you don't, it's a good time to kind of reflect on why that might be, how you might be able to improve your recognition in the future, and make sure that, you know, that you are communicating the value add that you have on the job. So tonight we have 4 amazing women participants. I've gotten a chance to get to know them through a couple conversations and certainly here tonight, and you guys are in for a treat. So I'd like each of you, if you would not mind, to please go ahead and introduce yourself. Just take a few minutes to tell us who you are and where you are today in your career, and then we'll just move down the line.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. Happy to be here. Danielle, Joanna McPherson, and I work for Delta Airlines. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. Work for Delta Airlines. I get the pleasure and fun job of working for a 90-year-old airline that is really becoming an innovative tech company. And what I do at Delta is lead our IT digital transformation, which is all about strategically ensuring that all of you who fly Delta make sure your customer experience is a fabulous one. So I also am the president for Women in Technology here in Atlanta, and we're an organization. Our focus is really all around excelling women and girls of all ages in STEAM. I like to travel a little, of course. I enjoy exploring wines, and my family here have a husband and a rambunctious 4-year-old who's going on 20. So happy to be here.
Very good. Awesome. Thanks, Danielle.
Yep.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Denise Reese, and I am, as of today, a client principal with ThoughtWorks, which is a global custom software development company based in Chicago, but a global entity, about 4,500 folks worldwide. But hot off the press, breaking news, I resigned from ThoughtWorks today.
And you guys heard it here first.
And I actually had to make sure that I made sure I was going to resign tomorrow, but I knew this was happening, and so it's relevant to our topic to be able to disclose that. So I actually resigned a day early so that I could talk freely about that. But I'll be moving into a vice president of digital transformation role with SoftVision, which is, thank you, I'm excited. I'll start with them on May 1st. And they are also a global technology firm founded in Romania, but now a global company with operations really across the globe, and focusing on all things digital transformation, which is super exciting. It's a hot space to be in. It's a little bit of a buzzword, I think, but it's really, for me, all about leveraging digital technology in particular to solve business problems and to help clients to really move the needle needle forward within their respective organizations. I've been in Atlanta about 10 years, moved here from London 9.5 years ago, and also love to travel, have been in technology sales of some flavor for about 19 years, and just love giving back to community. Finished up Leadership Atlanta. I was the class of 2017. Also serve on a number of nonprofit boards, rolling off of Cool Girls at the moment, and I'll be starting on the board for Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta later this year. So excited to be here.
Good, good. Thank you, Denise. Sue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sue Rayburn, and glad to be here with my fellow panelists and everyone else in the audience. I'm currently the AVP of Data and Analytics at Delta Community Credit Union, which is a 75-year-old institution, and started off as a small, financial services entity, serving the needs of Delta airline employees, and now we are in the community. We have opened our doors to, the Metro Atlanta communities. I lead their data practice, if anything related to data and innovation using data is what I do on a day-to-day basis. I've started their data practice, and in the last 5 years, we've been able to get a return on investment greater than 300%. I've grown my team by almost, it's thrice the size of what it was, and we've had a lot of successes with it. It's something that we, proudly announce. And I've been in technology for more than 20 years now, and most of it in data and, related, subfield, if you will. I'm also a semi-professional singer on the side, and I teach and perform Indian classical music, so that's my other passion. My day job is my passion for data, and my night job is teaching kids and performing.
Wow, super nice. That's great. Thank you, Sue. Mandy.
All right. Hello, my name is Mandy Gladwell. I'm Director of Marketing for CHC Technology, which is a group of 3 companies, Centrix IT, Adapture, and the Centrix Group. I'm very excited to be here, especially in the presence of such goddesses. I am, to full disclosure, only 30 years old. I don't know what I'm doing sitting up here with these ladies, but I think I'm the token millennial tonight. So I'm here to share my experience at a very fast-growing organization, a very fast-growing career, to be honest with you, because, started pretty early at the age of the company, and we've grown very quickly and had a lot of opportunities to contribute at a really high level. And being that I'm in marketing, I know a thing or two about communicating and how to tell your story. So I hope to share some of that insight with you tonight, and I appreciate you guys being here.
Very good. So that's a perfect segue to our first question, and you can tell that these ladies know how to communicate about themselves. And so we've talked a little bit on the phone prior to this meeting that one of the key ways that you can really communicate your value and get the recognition that you deserve is to weave your accomplishments into your conversation. And that kind of led to, well, how do you do that naturally? And I know you all had some great thoughts on that. Anyone take it away? Danielle?
So I'll go first.
Yes, thank you.
So one of the things that I think is very important, I shared with the group, is anybody familiar with a book? It's called The Art of Bragging, Tooting Your Own Horn by Peggy Kloss. No? Yeah? We got
Yes,
one? Okay.
yes.
So did you like it? Yeah, okay.
Can you tilt your mic down just a little bit?
Yep, sure. It's a book that I have in my library, and it's one that I reference often because I really believe when it comes to communicating your value, it's really all about effective communication strategies. So I think, our friend down there, Mandy, can and make sure we are communicating effectively today, right? But it's all about being prepared and knowing what your value is. So what is that? That's, your personal, your professional accomplishments, but being able to share your accomplishments in a way that feels natural to you, right? And it's telling your story that helps people understand what your contributions were, what benefits did you bring the company, and or what were your contributions, and helping people understand what role you played and whether it was a project-based type of effort, moving a project forward and delivering on some major revenue growth for a company, or it's just, leading a really tough, challenging project. But being prepared with those stories to share those in any different type of environment that you're in. I will say, oftentimes, at the boardroom table, day in, day out, our male peers, they have no problem, shouting out, yeah, hey, I led a team before and we were successful in driving this to completion, so I'll take that on really quick. And oftentimes, our female peers are less likely to raise their hand. So I really believe it's all about weaving in the types of opportunities that you have to tell your story in any type of situation and or any type of forum.
Well done.
I think you brought up some good points. And to kind of play off that, one of the things that's funny to me, you kind of mentioned saying, how can you weave your accomplishments naturally? Like, so it doesn't seem like you're kind of just inserting it into a conversation. I'm sure we can all relate, when we're putting on makeup, the hardest look to achieve is the natural look, right? You end up wearing more makeup that way than any other way. And that's I kind of think of it the same way. It kind of takes a lot of preparation, to your point. And one of the things I had mentioned in our call when we talked about this was being really proactive in that, and sort of planning ahead, being proactive and intentional with, when you set your meetings, when you have your conversations, what you want to talk about, what goals you're going to sort of lay out for yourself ahead of time, so that as you start checking those boxes and ticking them off, you kind of have something to reference back to, like, we set these goals out and here's where we are.
Well said.
So just to add to that, so 3 words resonate for me when I think about presenting myself and my accomplishments and even desires, what those things that I want to take on. Facts. So come with facts. Not what I think, not what I thought, not how I felt. Not that you want people to like you, because they won't. You're not pizza or tacos. And stick with what is factual. And if you were a part of a team that you were able to either demonstrate a certain amount of value, or there was an outcome based on the project or initiative that you were on or you were a part of, and if you led that, then be factual about what your contributions were. The next thing is relevance. So you don't want to just start touting off facts and figures if you're in a conversation and you're talking about where the team is going to go to dinner tonight. So you want to make sure that when you're doing that, it's relevant to the conversation that's happening, but also relevant to the audience that you're speaking to. And the last thing is context. You want to also always make sure that you're providing the right contextual framework to what it is that you're presenting. And I think following that kind of recipe ensures that you're always presenting yourself in a way that is that's factual, that's relevant, and it's contextual to the surrounding that you're in.
Yeah, I agree with everything Denise said. I think that the other thing that has worked for me, in personally speaking, is being in data and analytics, I tend to be very factual. I tend to be very facts and figures oriented. And even if you put yourself in the right context and make it relevant, sometimes you have to connect with your audience. Yeah. You got to make sure that you are plugged into the key care-abouts of the audience that you're talking to. And just my own personal story, having come from very tech savvy organizations to one that is really more about financial services, not so much about technology. Technology is an aid, but it's not the main focus, and it's not their business. I've had to change my the way I tell my story, the way I interact with my audience, really understanding their pain points and trying to relate to them. And that was a revelation to me, because I've always come from a place that, well, my accomplishments should speak for themselves, but sometimes you got to make that extra effort to really connect with your audience, and to me, understanding their key care-abouts and, really connecting with them in a way that they can relate back to it and they don't feel overwhelmed is extremely important.
One quick question, is there anybody who's in consulting here? You are? Okay, so I was in consulting for 17 years, and I just moved to Delta a year and a half ago, and I think in approaches, solutions, methodologies, that's just how I think, right? And sometimes I communicate that way. And so one of the things that I've heard is they say, oh my gosh, you keep using that consulting speak. So, to Sue's point, I think being able to understand where they are connecting with the audience, knowing what their need is, what their perspective is, what problem they're trying to solve, and connecting to that through a story and or conversation is very helpful, because oftentimes they can, the perception is you are foreign, whatever you are saying is foreign to them. So, it's one thing to make sure that you are cognizant about who you're talking to in terms of your audience.
Very well said. So lots of learnings there. The other kind of hypothesis we had is that women actually are more about pursuing a project to perfection. So we will spend, 150% of our time making sure we've dotted all the I's, we've crossed the T's, the PowerPoint's perfect. But have we really done a great job socializing with all the people who are going to ultimately determine, the success of the project and ultimately our recognition? So what do y'all say about that?
Yeah, you have to build those relationships, or build up not just relationships, but relationship capital, because you want to be able to leverage those relationships in some capacity in the future. And sometimes you got to call in a favor, you got to phone a friend. And if you don't have that capital built up to the extent that you can do that, then it makes it even more difficult. And we forget that your network internally is equally, or if not more important than your external network. We spend a lot of time doing things like this, going to events, meeting folks, passing out the business cards, connecting on Twitter and LinkedIn and all of those things. And that's great. It does have its relevance and it's good to do. But you've got to put that same amount of effort into really cultivating those relationships internally, because oftentimes when you do that, those are the folks that will be speaking about you when you're not in the room. Those are the folks that will give you those opportunities because they either were in the trenches with you, doing the hard work of getting stuff done, or they've heard about you because somebody else is talking about how great and wonderful you are. And then from there, you don't have to be the person that's always touting yourself, because other people are watching you and they're doing it for you.
And true personal story here, the whole company, pretty much everybody on the leadership team and other areas in my business, in our company, acknowledge that my team has done a fantastic job of, serving our mission, essentially. But, there are people, what I discovered was that there are sections of the company that still could not connect with me. Mm-hmm. And this I discovered by accident. There is a human being behind every interaction. It's not just about professional relationship building. And this was truly a revelation for me, because I come from, there are not a lot of things, culturally speaking, I can really relate back to a lot of the people in my company. Weird name, weird accent, all of that, right? Mm-hmm. So I felt like I was being professional. I was conducting myself well. I was, doing my job and probably excelling at what I did. But ultimately, connecting with I happened to sit next to one of my peers at one of our conferences, and we started talking about our personal lives, and we discovered some commonality there in terms of, she had a husband that worked in the fire department. My brother-in-law had worked at the fire department, and we started talking about some challenges we'd had, with children and stuff. And lo and behold, she goes back and says, I did not know that side to Sue. She's so nice. She's so personable. And she became a promoter, and I was just, the whole experience was truly an eye-opener for me, because I never really thought of it that way. I thought my accomplishments should speak for themselves. I'm being very professional in the way I conduct myself, but really got to connect with that human being behind that persona, that professional persona. That's just my take on it.
I think that's a great story. And I just want to say that you weren't probably excelling in your role. You were definitely excelling in your role. And for me, one of the things that has been challenging is, especially when you're young and you're hungry and you have the fire, and you want to, promote yourself, you kind of come across sometimes, not everybody responds really well to that, right? I'm sure everybody can relate to that in some shape or fashion. And so it's like, how do you do that without rubbing people the wrong way or, creating a jealous environment or anything like that? And for me, a lot of what I read, I think it was like a Dave Ramsey thing of all things. And it was about, building yourself up by helping others, and just reaching out to people in the organization. And you can build connections by recognizing opportunities to help other people. And when you help other people, you demonstrate leadership and you create advocates. And when I started kind of thinking about things in that regard, it really changed some things for me.
Very good. Very cool. Thank you. A lot of leadership training that we've all gone through is really about the team, right? Build your team, support your team, promote your team, talk about your team. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, right? We all love that, and we are all proud of, building our team. But how do you not leave you out of that equation? How do you not, facilitate everyone else's, promotion, and you're still there when you feel like you deserve a promotion? So what do you all think about that?
So a couple of things I think about that. One is you can't forget yourself. It is okay to say I. The team's contributions are very important because there's value in your ability, your leadership ability and capabilities to drive a team towards, a certain goal or outcome that you want to achieve. But I think the important part of it is reflecting on your contribution and knowing and saying, you know what, I have taken a team and, turned this team around. I've developed, people who were non-believers into believers. Look at all of the different aspects of how, if you were not in the position that you were in, what would the outcome have been if you weren't there? The second part that I would say is have a trusted circle of people around you, because oftentimes you won't realize the things that you have done. So recently, the last year and a half, when I came into Delta, I had a team that I adopted, I'll call them, because they were, individuals who've been at the company. They were legacy. They've been there for, 10 plus years. And here I am, the newbie, beat bopping in, and I'm ready to do new strategic initiatives and drive. And they were like, hey, whoa, you slow down, time out, right? But it really took the opportunity for me to get to know those individuals, understand them, figure out what their best strengths were, and building a cohesive team and moving them into positions that were going to enable them to excel in their positions and as a team cohesively drive towards our goals. And so, in the past year, I hadn't really thought of it, but my boss, we were, having a session, and she's like, it's amazing the work you have done with that team. And I was like, what do you mean? And so by her sharing that feedback with me, that helped me realize and understand what my contributions were. So it was important for me to hear that feedback. And so now that's become a part of my repertoire in terms of being able to share. One of my key strengths is being able to build the strengths of a turnaround team and drive for results. So, that's the other part of it. And the last thing is, and we were talking about, have your elevator speech. A pitch, not a speech, a pitch. Have an elevator pitch. I probably have 2 or 3. I probably never use the 2 or 3 that I create. But at a minimum, I'm prepared and I have something that I can pull from, right? So it's important to have those. And, I know if you've been a part of leadership development classes, you go through and create one and you feel like I can't do this in 5 minutes. But I truly would recommend, do the reflective time after and spend some time creating those, and know over a period of time that elevator pitch will change. And you'll add to it, you'll take away, and you'll refine it. But just make sure that your authentic self is in that pitch, and you're comfortable with sharing that with others. So.
Yeah, I did a program a couple of years ago through Giant Worldwide. They used to do LeaderCast, and they have a executive, what they call, it used to be Executive Core, now it's X-Core. And the tagline for the program is know yourself to lead yourself, because you really can't lead others effectively unless you truly get to know what it's like to be on the other side of you. And to Danielle's point, making sure that you keep people around you. It doesn't need to be everybody that you come in contact with, obviously, but you need to have that core circle of, maybe 4 or 5 folks that are your kitchen cabinet or your personal board of directors. Those folks that are going to keep you in check when you're getting a little too far beyond yourself, but also those folks that are going to build you up as well, to help you to remind yourself of how great you are and the awesomeness that lives within you, but also to kind of bring you back to reality when you're getting maybe a little beside yourself, because we all need a sanity check every now and then.
Yeah, I think it is being authentic, but at the same time, not being afraid to stand for yourself and ask for that raise or that promotion. Like someone said, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yes.
So, so that's kind of a mantra for me. I learned that very early in my career, that I had to stand up for myself and be my self-advocacy, but also build your network around you, your center of influence, if you will, around you, and cultivate that and get to know these people, and they can be your advocate, and that has also that's something that has worked for me equally. Having that close set of advisors, like she said, and also being very intentional and strategic in the way you communicate with others, and how you say things is as important as what you say.
Yes,
this is something that I've discovered, just being very, very careful and mindful of the words you choose, to bring more positivity in what you say. But you're speaking the truth, you're being authentic, but at the same time you're, where you need to be harsh, you temper that harshness, be kind with your honesty, if you will.
Yeah, and Giant, we called that speaking the truth in love. You don't have to, be so pointed and hurtful and damaging with your words, but you can be real and honest with folks about either how great they are at something, or when you're not doing things so great. There's a way to be able to communicate that in a way that is effective and get your point across, but you don't have to be hurtful and mean in order to do that.
I like what Sue said about not being afraid. I think courage is a really big theme. I think having courage to stand up for yourself, advocate for yourself, ask for a raise, ask for a promotion. But for me, courage comes with competence. you have to be great at what you do, and you have to be passionate about what you do. And when you routinely perform and you routinely, demonstrate your competence and your abilities, at that point, you have to find the courage in yourself to communicate that. And then if you keep doing it over and over, you will build confidence. And then it just becomes part of who you are as a person. And I say that as somebody who's kind of still going through that, honestly. I mean, I've never done something like this before. It took some courage for me to be here. Especially, thank you, but especially among such seasoned and intelligent women. But I know that if I put myself out here right now and I demonstrate this courage, that next time it's going to be a little bit easier. And the time after that, it's going to be easier. And soon I'll be just as, polished as these ladies. So.
I mean, I think one of the things that I always remember is when you are the most uncomfortable, that's truly when you are growing. So just as you said, it's like riding a bike. When you learn how to ride a bike, you had training wheels on, right? You were like, ease on down the road. And they took the training wheels off, and you're like, whoa, and then you finally gained your balance, right? At that point in time when you were wobbly is when you were very uncomfortable. So I challenge you to always be uncomfortable, because if you are comfortable, that means you are complacent, and you need to poke yourself.
Yeah, I tell my team this, and they're here in full strength. So
That's
I
great.
tell
We're going
them,
to sign them up for the next one. Since they're all here, we'll just sign them up for the next one this week.
I always tell them, if you're sitting too comfortably in your seat, then you're not learning anything, you're not growing.
Right.
So you got to be a little above.
Yeah. So when it comes to, you may not have 100% of what the requirements are. You will have to be uncomfortable putting yourself in a position to say, you know what, I can do this, and or apply for the role, or whatever it might be, to put yourself in the position to be in the forefront for getting whatever it is that you want.
So can I tell a story?
Yes, please.
So,
Next question.
No, you can't tell a story.
I know her. She's a part of my board of directors, so I'm like kicking her underneath the table. With this transition from ThoughtWorks to Soft Vision, it's probably the most uncomfortable I've been in my career. It's a big role, reporting to the CEO of the company. I've never done that before. And I just know that when I got to the point of realizing, okay, this is real. Like, I think this is gonna happen. I didn't think it was, but it is happening. And, for my entire career, I've just kind of taken what was given to me, be it, what the down from the title of the opportunity to salary to everything. And I mean, I negotiated a little bit, but this was one of those times where I said, you know what, I've got to do something different, because I am really good at what I do. I love what I do, but I also have a lot of experience that I'm bringing to the table. And it's time for me to really, truly walk in all of these amazing experiences that I've had over the years. And so we got to the point of, it's the night before, I'm texting Danielle, I've got this call tomorrow to go through my package, and it's like the universe just sends you signals and prepares you for what you need. And so when I was online, I kept seeing articles about why women, and in particular women of color, we don't negotiate when we're walking into the door with companies. We don't ask for what we want. And as a result, then we're, on the sidelines complaining about, well, I'm not getting paid, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting that. Well, did you ask for it? Yeah. And so I just said, okay, I'm going in. Like, I'm going in the trenches, right? And it made it easier because it was a phone call, and so that was a whole lot easier, because I was able, because I don't have a poker face, in case you haven't figured that out. And, we got to the conversation of comp, and, the CFO, he threw, and I think that was the other thing that was intimidating. It's like, I'm actually negotiating with the CFO of the company about my package. Like, he's the numbers guy, right? And, he threw out a number, and it was a good number, but I remembered our conversation that he and I had when we first met. And he gave me the number of what other folks that were in similar and even in roles that below me were making that were actually above the number that he gave me. And I remembered like being able to like hear my heartbeat, and I just said, well, you know, that's a great number, thanks, appreciate it. But when we spoke, this was the range that we talked about, and based on the role that you want me to come in at, now it's actually a level or two above what we actually talked about. So, you know, this is actually what I was thinking. And so he starts talking about, you know, he's calling out different guys' names on the teams, and oh, this one's making this and this one's making that. And I said, yeah, you know, I said this time around, I want to have pay equity with my male colleagues. And he got quiet, and I was like, oh, you've done it. And then he actually came back with a number that was higher than the number that I wanted. And all of that to say that it is you really have to put yourself out there and be uncomfortable, but absolutely put yourself in a position to ask for what it is that you want. If it's a new opportunity, if it's, you know, 2 more days off throughout the year, if it's, you know, having a flexible work schedule because you've got other commitments, if it's tuition reimbursement because you want to go onto a leadership program or you want to pursue an advanced degree, whatever that thing is, do not be afraid to put yourself out there and ask for what you want, because all they can say is no. And if they say no, at least you can feel confident within yourself that you put yourself out there and that you were courageous and that you were fearless in going after what it is you want.
Yeah, that's cool.
Nicely said. Any other? That's great. It's great. Very inspirational. Any other great stories? We do have our resident millennial in the panel, and so she actually brought up to us that she has a different journey that she's gone on, and so we're wondering if the situation and the environments are changing.
Yeah, I mean, when we were all talking, we were kind of sharing stories. Like I said, I mean, I don't have as much experience to fall back on as these ladies do, and I don't really have a lot of like bad stories, you know. I have a pretty positive work environment. Our leadership is all male. However, I don't feel in any way, you know, I don't know, just I don't feel like I don't have opportunities. I don't feel like I'm not heard. I certainly don't feel harassed or anything like that, you know, so, but I know that these stories happen to other women, and so you know, it's not something I can personally speak to, and we were talking about it, I was like, I wonder if that's a sign, really, that the times are kind of changing, because I am the youngest person on the panel, and I have been in the workforce and working in technology the least amount of time, and you know, I'd like to think that the experience I'm having now, which is a very, very positive one, is really the result of a lot of groundwork and hard work that was done by previous generations and people before me who paved a path that was a little easier for me. And so whatever I can do to kind of keep that momentum moving forward and kind of make even further improvements, I mean, I'm going to commit to. So that's kind of what I had to share in that regard.
Very cool. Thank you.
You know, I think one thing that I like to say is courage also comes from, you know, leveraging the right self-talk. For me personally, it's
Very
been
good idea.
It's you know, I always demand perfection of myself, and if I even fall a little short of my own expectations, most of the time I don't meet my own expectations. And you know, there's this thing going on in the head. Oh, you didn't do a good job. You don't deserve it. You know, these are the things that kill you. So something that I've had to constantly work on is changing my thoughts, and those reflect into more positive, more courageous behavior. You know, it all starts with your thinking.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say that that's something that I continue to keep working on.
Very cool. Anything else that you ladies want to ask before we open it up to the audience? All right, super valuable information. So now we have to hear from the brave guys that have shown up in this room too. If you have any questions. Okay. okay. I was just trying to be, diplomatic up here. But anyone who has questions, hey, I'm likely to keep my head down, work really hard, and there may be someone next to me, maybe a male, who is, getting all the recognition and, socializing around. And how do you really try to attack that in a way that's going to be ultimately to your gain?
First of all, who cares about him? No.
Right.
No, I think one of the things that we alluded to earlier is relationships are critical. They're key. If you've got your head down at your desk, then who knows you? Who knows what you're doing at your desk? So it's very important to raise your head up, and if that guy next to you is certainly getting into your head, then it's probably more than likely time for you to have a little bit of a self-talk, right? To figure out, hey, you know what? Maybe what is this guy doing that I'm not? What are some of the key learnings that you can take away from the way that he is promoting himself and use that in a way to reflect on how you can self-promote your own self. But I would recommend get away from your desk. I mean, you want to stay at your desk and work through the lunch hour because you're not in meetings, but I mean, go do the lunch, take time, have a coffee chat. The person next to you who you probably know by saying good morning and small talk, ask them what they like to go out for lunch or coffee and get to know what projects they're working on, because there may be opportunities or synergies for collaboration from a cross-company standpoint. So I think, again, that relationship currency that Denise mentioned is key. I personally had an experience where my boss, she made a boss move totally, and I loved every minute of it. She went to another part of the business, and I had to think to myself, okay, I felt a little protected by her because I knew she was my advocate at the table, and she's the one that's talking about the things that I'm doing and supporting me. But I had to stop and think really quick. Oh, okay, who are my other advocates, right? And it's just been a year and a half, so it's really still a short time frame. So I had to make sure that I was thinking through. I've been in program portfolio management, so I actually keep a networking plan. And it might sound kind of creepy, but I just focus on who are the people who I am meeting with, for what reasons, what objectives. It might be just, hey, connecting some folks with mutual interests that, hey, I think Mandy and Denise, you guys should connect because you have some similar interests to share. So that's a relationship opportunity. But I most certainly think it's important to use those opportunities as well as you're building relationships, to take that as an opportunity to practice. If you need to practice promoting yourself, take them out to coffee and talk about what you're doing.
Right.
Get uncomfortable on your own terms.
Yeah. One of the things that somebody told me one time that really stuck with me is assume noble intent. And I think if you kind of come to the table sometimes, if you're having conflict with somebody with that in mind, it is easier to build a connection. With somebody who kind of seems a little adversarial and so in one way or another. We talk a lot about some of our natural tendencies, right? Our natural tendencies toward perfectionism, and women tend to be a little more nurturing, kind of putting others before themselves. There are some natural things at play, but I think for men, it's like that too. And a lot of times they might not even realize what they're doing. And if you, again, have the courage to say like, hey, come on, let's have a conversation about this. Do you realize that you just spoke over me in that meeting? Or do you realize that, what you said in front of the client kind of made me look kind of bad? If you just kind of like come kind of honest, authentic, courageous, and just kind of open the door for that communication, you never know what that person's going to say. I would say at least 8 out of 10 times they were like, whoa, I didn't even mean to do that. I had no idea. And a lot of times, like, that's how you foster growth in general, is kind of helping others understand what we're all trying to achieve and work together, building advocates and obtaining sponsors. In the conversation we had prior to this, I think it was you who said,
What did I say?
the mentors versus sponsors.
Oh, no, that was me. And I was going to, actually, I was going to chime in with that. Because it's important to have, when we were doing our prep call, we talked about, we always look for mentors and people that we look up to. And, that's good to have. But mentors can't take you to the next level. You need a sponsor. You need somebody that's going to be advocating for you when you're when you're not in the room, that they're occupying spaces for you that maybe you're not in physically, but they can make sure that you've got that opportunity to move to the next level, and seek out those folks that can really help to sponsor you through your career, either within your current organization or who might be able to sponsor you out of something into a new opportunity.
She was one of my sponsors.
Okay, next question. I'm sorry, they're blue, in the blue. In her negotiation about her salary, what did she think about how she would, could she walk away? What would it take for her to walk away? Kind of what was her minimum deal? Is that accurately reflecting?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I wouldn't say I was that intentional about it, but I did just walk into it knowing what I wanted. And the other thing that I did was I talked to other folks that are recruiting, that are at executive levels, that are looking for senior folks, and kind of testing the market in terms of, here's my skill set, and this is what I offer, this is what I come to the table with. What is the market willing to pay for that? And in one of those conversations, I was told, you're selling yourself way too short. And so I think doing some of that homework ahead of time and knowing what the market is going to pay for your skills and being able to ask for that is super helpful.
Yeah, just another little technique. I'm a list maker, but and business development before, when I was in consulting, as we were going through opportunities, I would always make a negotiation list of like the must-haves, the negotiables, the optionals, and in those conversations, just kind of weigh, what's most important through those conversations to help make the best decision in the favor of what you were going for.
Yeah. And what happened as a result of that was, like, when I got that thing, I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's keep going.
Let's keep it going.
and started
There's
talking
more, not
about,
on my list.
let's talk about bonuses. Let's talk about equity. We're owned by the company may have an event at some point in the future. Well, I want to be able to cash in on that in some way. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what my commission plan looks like for me and for my team. And so it caused me to have conversations beyond just what I'm bringing home every couple of weeks. Having a conversation that was much more forward thinking, and that was something that I hadn't even considered before.
And they appreciate if you're negotiating well, right?
Because they know I'm going to go hard for the company well, right?
That's right. I had to sneak that in there. Anyone else have a question? Yes, ma'am. Repeat the question. So how do you, thank you, I'm sorry. How do you get a sponsor that can help propel you up and not just laterally? Is that correct?
When you're in transition.
Yes.
Social media, LinkedIn is awesome. Twitter is like my new favorite thing. I've gone from being the person that hated Twitter to I'm like tweeting all the time. I'm following folks, and I think using those different channels, and then also looking for folks that you feel like there's some synergy with also, because you want people that you've got some sort of a connection to, right? Not just like random, like building up your Twitter followers or your connections on LinkedIn. Like the people that have like over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, you don't know all of those people. But so I think just being intentional about seeking out folks that maybe they're at a company that you want to be a part of, and shoot them a note on LinkedIn, or invite them out for coffee, or just say, listen, I'll come, stop by the company, I'm really interested. I saw that you posted XYZ, relevance, right? Context. So, I saw that you posted this, and I'd really like to, that was a really interesting insight. I'd love to talk to you more about that. Can we arrange some time? I think just being not only intentional, but being courageous and willing to kind of seek out those folks that can help you.
And it wouldn't be a bad idea to have like a strategic plan for your career.
Yeah.
And continue to keep cultivating those relationships, whether it's internal or external. You know, that should be something that's ongoing all the time.
Very good. Anyone else? Yes.
So I have a question for Sue.
You know, if I'm by my nature micromanager, how did you train yourself to give, you know, to others and not be on their back and allow them to do the job they were hired to do and then come in after that?
I think it's like, you know, what you do with your children, right? I mean, when they're little, you watch over them and you probably, you know, kind of overwhelm them with your attention, but then slowly you learn to let them sometimes fail. So I think that's part of it, you know, being comfortable with failure, because sometimes you learn more when you fail. So with your team, it's the same thing. With yourself or your team, there's no difference there. Letting them take the lead sometimes and letting go, watching, being there to support, you know, be that mentor, you know, from behind the scenes. It's difficult for people that expect a lot of themselves and the people around them. So I'm not certainly not saying that I've mastered the art, but to me, this is something that I have learned along the way, that, you know, you give people space, let them do what you've asked them to do, and, you know, be there to course correct if they keep your doors open always for advice. You know, they seek you out and ask you for advice. That's what I would say.
Something else to think about, because I enjoy developing teams, is put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
Would you want somebody on your back?
Exactly.
Right.
So important, especially in technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leading people in technology, you need to understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would definitely suggest empowerment. Think about empowering them. And if you can come from that point of view of empowering them, it's much more about them and less about you kind of relieving that control. And of course, right, give them the boundaries that you need them to work within, but you can give them the space to fail, but you're going to be there, right, to help guide, to help coach as well, right, because you're going to be asking them questions, which just will allow them to learn, and eventually you'll get to a point where you're aligned on, hey, here's how we want to do things, here's the approach, right, exactly, and they'll start to learn you more as a leader, right, which I think can always be helpful in those types of situations.
I think I heard the key is being comfortable even if they fail. I think that's my thing is I don't want them to fail.
Right.
Like, no, they can't fail.
Yeah.
Be comfortable.
Well, select the opportunities where you think, you know, you can empower them, but these are not something that'll, you know, reflect poorly on the entire
company.
team and,
Right,
you know, just fall
exactly.
flat on your face.
Yeah.
You know, so
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, right?
Yeah.
Because every individual is unique as well. Some people might not be ready for that.
And also, as you build your team, you know, thinking of skills that will complement, you know, you build a team where, you know, you have complementing skills.
Yeah.
So you balance it out overall. That's been something that has been something that I've been very intentional about.
Yeah.
You know, we have a good balance in my team.
Diversity. Yeah.
This
Okay, we
is-
have- oh, I'm sorry.
Just,
Go ahead.
just almost like a helpful tip. I mean, there are some great online collaboration tools. Like my team, we use Basecamp a lot to communicate, and so a lot of the, you know, if you want to call it micromanaging or just checking in, can happen not really even directly face to face, right? It can be, you know, on something that like Basecamp or an Asana or like a task management kind of tool. I also started using this tool in the last year called 15-5. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's great. It sends every week. It sends you're supposed to spend 15 minutes answering 5 questions, and it rotates through the questions about kind of what their biggest accomplishments were that week, what their biggest challenges were for that week, and kind of asks for their input about certain things like what's something I can be better doing as a manager for you. how can I help you meet other people in the organization? You know, it kind of rotates through a lot of questions like that, and it happens automatically, and then they just submit them, and then here I am, I have everything I need for the week, and I didn't have to talk to anybody.
Perfect, millennial. So the name of those products were Basecamp and?
Basecamp and 15.5.
Yeah. Okay.
Hashtag millennial.
Okay, so you guys are pretty much out of time at the moment. Is there any last really quick question? Danielle, Denise, Sue, Mandy, thank you so much, you guys. Great input.
And thank you, Alicia, for moderating tonight. So come back next month, second Thursday of the month for the next meeting, and Ray Lingle will tell us what's gonna happen at the next meeting.
So it's a perfect segue. We had earlier, actually last month, enhancing perception. Well, that's this one. Enhancing perception gain recognition. But prior to this event, we have position yourself for promotion opportunities. So this is the third in the Career Pack series. I saw that somewhere in our pre-production stuff, called Network Like a Ninja. And it's funny how when I was selecting panelists for this, one of them was saying, I've never been called a ninja before, but they're excited about coming to share their techniques, their strategies, some of them traditional, some of them using technology like LinkedIn, how you can further build that relationship and expand your network to help you grow in your career. So please bring your friends. I challenge everyone here, bring 5 of their friends. This is a great venue to have a large group of women networking to help build that network, to be advocates to help you grow in your career. So please come May 10th, right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. So we've got a whole lineup of events that we've shared with you guys tonight, Network Like a Ninja, and then we're going to get to more technical topics. After that, we'll do a whole series of women in cybersecurity, hospitality, emerging technologies, big data. So please come back on the second Thursday of the month and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you. One more round of applause.